thank you for tuning into episode 23 of the Syracuse Sport Business Conference Digital Series. My name is Ben Alon, and I'm a co-founder and the president of the Syracuse Sport Business Conference. I'll be introducing today's special guest, and thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. I'm thrilled to welcome Ray Anczelowicz to episode 23 of the Digital Series. Ray is currently the founder of Gotham Hoops. He started his collegiate career at the University of New Haven, a Division II basketball school where he was a student assistant coach. And I want to emphasize here that that is not a normal manager. It's a student assistant coach. He'll talk about that in a little bit. Then after his freshman year, he transferred to LIU Brooklyn, where he was also a student assistant coach. He went on to graduate from LIU Brooklyn with a Bachelor's of Arts in Media Management and was a student assistant coach at LIU, like I just said. At both schools, Ray partook in the recruitment process with local New York City athletes, worked out the players, curated data and analytics for the team and for the coaches to be able to tell what they have to do next to make their team more successful. He's also previously worked as a digital media manager at Hoop Group, digital media specialist for 5-Star Basketball, digital media specialist at the Gazelle Group, a video editor at Crossover, a video editor at New Lion, a FIBA licensed player agent, and a business development representative at LBI Software. Ray, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. And, you know, I'm sure not a lot of people know this, but we actually met years ago when I was almost like 10 or 12 years old, trying to break out into the basketball scene at Basketball Academy of Long Island. Shout out Sonny Farrow.
Yeah.
And, you know, back then you told me that if I kept working, there would be a chance one day I could play college basketball. And, you know, I just never forgot about how you were able to instill that passion and fire in me. So thank you for that.
Oh, of course. No, that just made my day. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, for sure. So let's jump into the questions. I'd love to hear about your time as a student at the University of New Haven, your freshman year, as well as LIU Brooklyn. What were some of the steps in your college career that positioned you to improve your networking skills?
Absolutely. I mean, so the first thing that came to mind is being comfortable at being uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is, I had to hang up jersey. I stopped playing after high school. I was a varsity student athlete at Seaford High School in Seaford. So I was no longer playing on the court, but I was fortunate to still have opportunities to work in basketball, both at, as you mentioned, UNH and LIU. And as far as networking goes, that was just the best opportunity for me to connect with like-minded student athletes as well as budding professionals. So I always had a passion of being involved in sports management. Granted, I started and I launched Gotham Hoops as a 16-year-old, but the opportunity to work day in and day out, not only with in my high caliber coaching staffs, but also with high caliber players, it was just a dream come true. And those are still relationships that I have to this day. And so they were just two great experiences.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, how did your time at LIU Brooklyn help your direction with Gotham Hoops? You know, like, how did you know that you wanted to work in the sport management field in general?
Absolutely. It really revolved around seeing the process of LIU's men's basketball players as far as upon graduating and then pursuing a professional career. Granted, I mean, not many mid-major or even low-major guys are making it to the NBA regardless, but at LIU, even though they had won 3 Northeast Conference championships in a row, I was fortunate to work on the staff for their final year of that three-peat. But I had seen guys that had gone through the program and had seen the ups and downs of the recruiting process for the pro level. So one specific example is Jamal Olasaware, who had NEC Player of the Year, is one of the all-time, if not the all-time. I think someone just bumped him up off that number 1 spot, unfortunately, not too long ago. But one of the greatest players in LIU history. And I had previously attended this event, and I was preparing Jamal for this event, the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament, aka PIT, down in Virginia. And they've been going on for 60 plus years. And it is a showcase exclusive for college seniors. And it allows them to play in front of NBA scouts and overseas team personnel And it's a great opportunity, like I said, for them to showcase their skills. So not only was it great to be able to follow the career and help a player like Jamal prepare for that event, but it also inspired me to then start hosting my own college senior showcases. So it was a direct correlation between going down to PIT for a couple of years before going down supporting Jamal, but who's now had a budding career abroad. But like I said, it inspired me to want to help other student athletes, because PIT, I believe, was only hosting 60 players, and it was invitation only, of course. So they just wanted, and there was a lot of guys coming from those blue blood schools and a few of the elite mid and low major guys. And no Division II. So I recognize, similar to Gotham Hoops, that there are so many players out there that deserve this opportunity, and I want to take it upon myself to create a platform of promotion for them through an event.
That's so great. And, you know, for non-basketball heads, I know Portsmouth Invitational is huge. Like you said, it's been around for 60 years, but it's still extremely relevant today. And it's where all the ranked players go every year. So that's really great. And, you know, you've interacted with tons of high-profile athletes over the years, and you've traveled around the country to a slew of events. You know, what are some of your favorite memories or experiences that you can share with us from those?
So I've been fortunate to, not even through Gotham Hoops, but also working for some of the great basketball-specific companies that you mentioned. So a couple that come to mind, and this one was more through my relationship through Gotham Hoops. I built a relationship with the Harris brothers, and that being Tobias and Tyler. Tobias being with the Philadelphia 76ers now, and Tyler, who's in the G League and great overseas career. And this is before Tobias was at Tennessee. So during his high school career, in the summer, maybe his sophomore year going to his junior year, or junior to senior year. Anyway, he's at some camp. Might have been the NBPA Top 100 down in Virginia. And we're texting, we're texting or Facebook messaging, and and it's the night of the draft. I'll never forget this. He's asking me to give him updates on the draft. I can't remember what year it was, but I just found it so ironic, or I find it ironic now, that someone that was a first round pick and then a few years prior is trying to get notifications on and just wants to keep in touch with who's getting drafted, where they're going. Because gotta remember, this is pre-Woj tweeting out every pick as they come in. This is maybe even couldn't even get onto ESPN.com on his phone. So granted, that was just me sitting at home watching it and keeping a high profile prospect up to date with the draft. And it's just ironic that he was in that same draft, in that same position a few years later. But arguably a better story is through the group that you mentioned. They used to host a boys high school American events, very similar to McDonald's game. And it was down in New Orleans one year. And we all went. Granted, I'm 17, 18, same age as some of these high school seniors, and they're going on to play at every blue blood and top school in the country. And walking up and down Bourbon Street with Nerlens Noel, current Nick, the Harrison twins, who went to Kentucky, had stints in the NBA, and a bunch of other top guys. And it's a group of us walking down. Mind you, this is during the weekend of the Final Four. So you have Louisville was in it. I think Kentucky had just knocked them off, and of course a couple other teams. In Nerlens, that's when he had the high top,
the flat top, yeah.
So and again, he's 6'10", 6'11", so he sticks out like a sore thumb regardless. And this was just before he had Kentucky on his list of final schools, but before he committed, and walking down, and I promise you, we couldn't take two steps without Kentucky Wildcat fanatics swarming him, wanted to take pictures, sign autographs, and I was shocked. And I knew he was a nice kid, but it just blew my mind just seeing how patient and how humble he was to sit there and take pictures with everyone that asked, sign every single article of clothing, whatever memorabilia they had, so much so that all the other players left us just because they couldn't we were moving way too slow. But I was just in complete awe of a 17, 18-year-old high school student athlete just having that mentality and that level of professionalism that young. Again, his on-court skills were top notch. He was top one or two in his class that year. But just again, just a level of professionalism that he showed was something that that I really appreciated, and I'm sure it's helped him get to where he is today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he battled it up in the Northeast region in terms of
Hmm.
his high school play at NEPSAC. I remember being a Nick Stauskas fanatic growing up and
Hmm.
watching them play in high school. So that's a crazy story. And in terms of your networking successes that you've had throughout the industry, is there anyone in particular, such as a mentor or somebody who really looked after you, who helped you throughout your career?
To a degree, I was incredibly fortunate to build a strong relationship with Tom Konchowski, a heralded legendary scout from the New York City area that's known countrywide, if not even around the world, as just being someone for shoot. He actually just retired not too long ago, and I don't want to do him a disservice with how many decades he's been in the game, but it's been a while. It's been a long time, and when I got started at 15, 16 years old, of course, had to shook his hand, and and we just built a connection from there. So, not necessarily someone that took me under their wing, but anytime I would see him in the gym, he would welcome me with open arms, sit next to him, pick his brain, and it's just someone I've been very fortunate that I still keep in touch with to this day. I've been very fortunate just to have that relationship with someone of such pristine and such caliber as Tom Konchowski.
Well, that's great. And another question leading off of that that pertains more to Gotham is, what have you noticed about the basketball recruitment landscape? How do these players differ in the high school or college, amateur, professional leagues? I think amateur meaning AAU.
Mhm.
And what makes Gotham Hoops different from other recruitment organizations?
It's changed drastically. So keep in mind, I launched Gotham Hoops in 2009, and back then I was running around uh, greater New York City area, the boroughs, Westchester, Long Island, and with my handheld camcorder and my notebook. So when I wasn't sitting down and taking notes on players' tendencies, their strengths, their weaknesses, their measurables, etc., I was filming games up in at Christ the King High School, at St. Raymond,
Hmm.
at Boys and Girls, up at Rucker Park, anywhere that I could find noteworthy talent, or even that diamond in the rough. And again, in 2009, 2010, I was one of the very few people that were taking that initiative. So I say all that because in today's landscape, everyone and their mom can start filming games and cutting up highlight reels because it's just the technology is just caught up. I mean, back then we weren't able to record in such length on our phones. But again, nowadays you just have companies popping up, um, creating highlights almost for better or worse, and creating highlights for guys. And um, it's almost like a saturated market now because there's so many out there. And again, I'm all for promoting talent. My fear is that there's just so many outlets out there that are promoting the same players, and they're leaving the diamonds in the rough and the under the radar players off to the side. And mind you, that was my whole mission. So I think that's one aspect that I'm able to proudly say that differentiates Gotham Hoops from nearly everyone else. But then also it is my network. Again, I've been at this for over a decade now, and I'm blessed and fortunate to have built the Rolodex that I have, and it includes NBA team personnel, college coaches at all levels, prep school coaches, high school coaches, and then arguably most importantly, especially for these college kids that are looking for jobs, are my relationships abroad. So through one of my events that I've been running since 2014. I've been able to build a ton of relationships with general managers, club directors, scouts, professional agents in Europe, Asia, Australia. So I've been able to build a very large network, and I think that's also another aspect that differentiates Gotham Hoops from maybe some other recruiting outlets.
Yeah, and I remember when, you walked in the gym, all of us were a little nervous, We were like, "Oh my God, is he going to write an article about us? Is he going to do a mixtape? Like, what can we really, if we play well, like what could happen?" And I
Mhm.
remember there was just this aura in the gym when you walked in. We were all just, it was like everybody wanted to elevate their game to the next level. So, it's great to see what you've been able to do with the brand in this time. And going off that, you've had the opportunity to work with a lot of athletes in your field. How have these interactions helped you grow the Gotham Hoops brand itself? And is there any athlete in particular that stood out to you?
I know I mentioned him earlier, but Tobias Harris is certainly one of them. I remember during his high school tenure, there was always this, or there was this, not stigma, but there was a comparison between Tobias and Javon Pinkston, who was the #1 player in the area. And Javon went on to, unfortunately, had some injuries pop up, but he was a stud at Bishop Loughlin. Even a McDonald's All-American that same year, I believe, went on to play at Villanova. But it's so funny to me that Tobias has one of the richest contracts in NBA history. And again, there's certainly no disrespect to Javon, but it just goes to show just the work ethic. And that's really what I'm getting toward is the endless hours and the work ethic that Tobias put in to prepare himself, not only for Tennessee and the SEC and college hoops at large, but also for the NBA. Mind you, I mean, even at, what is he, maybe 28, 29 years old, he's a journeyman. I mean, he's been on a handful of teams, and Philly pointed up and offered him this great multi-year deal. One of the richest in NBA history. And credit Tobias. I credit his father, Terrell, was actually his representative on the contract side. So it's been great to see Tobias throughout his career. And he's one of the few guys, along with Maurice Harkless, that I've seen since 9th, 10th grade and all the way through college and now to the NBA. So those are just a couple of guys locally that I've been fortunate to see their careers blossom over the years and turn out into NBA players.
That's so sweet, especially local guys too, making it big. I'm sure back then they didn't think, oh, I'm going to go sign one of the richest contracts in the world,
Exactly.
or in league history. So, it's just a testament to, their vision as well, not just their work ethic, but where they saw themselves in the future.
Absolutely.
So, Ray, what's one mistake that you've had in your career in college or post-college, and how did you learn from that? What was the diamond in the rough that came out of that situation for you?
That's a great question. I would say, so I just alluded to this event, but it's the Gotham Hoops Invitational. It was the first year. This was my version of PIT, where they invited their 60 guys coming out of all the major conferences, all the major schools. I was going for the under the radar guys, the guys that were maybe borderline NBA, but needed an opportunity like this to really promote themselves overseas. And I'm using this as an example because in about, unfortunately had to miss out on 2020 just because of the world shut down last year, especially in March, April. But I've had about 200 plus players that have not only gone through the event, but have gone on to sign pro contracts, one of which in the NBA, handful in G League, and majority overseas, and a dozen or a couple of dozen in EuroLeague and high leagues abroad. And I mention all that because I should have gotten 2, 3, 4% of those kids' contracts and signed an agreement with them for their first deal after coming from my event. So I've been kicking myself since then, but definitely, I mean, I don't really regret it too much because it's a lesson learned, just like anything else in life. But just from a business sense, that's something that was certainly a mistake on my part. But at the end of the day, I organized an event, and it helps local student athletes. I'm proud of that. No matter what happens from a dollar perspective.
Yeah, as you should be. And you just mentioned COVID. You just mentioned the pandemic that shut the world down, unfortunately. It shut the Syracuse Sport Business Conference in person year one down. What are some of the challenges that you face in light of the constant changes due to COVID, and how has that affected your work during this time?
I mean, it's directly affected my ability to host live recruiting events. I mean, the last one, so in addition to the Invitational, which is again for college seniors, in 2018, I started the Gotham Hoops Winter Classic, which was intended for high school teams. And in 3 consecutive years, we've had 15 to 16 high school teams annually. So hundreds of players, 9th through 12th grade, have come through our event, gone into play collegially and on all 3 levels. I say that because the last event that we're able to host was last January 2020. And ironically, unfortunately, there was 2-day event. The Saturday and then Sunday was the day that Kobe Bryant and Gianna and the plane crash, the helicopter crash. So it was interesting being in the gym. I guess a side note, it's interesting being in the gym among basketball players, coaches, enthusiasts, and learning that someone that we obviously idolize and respect, arguably just as much as any top elite athlete in the world passed. So that was interesting to find it all out in a gym and hosting an event. So I say that because that was the last event we hosted in January. We were unable to do so in April. So now I'll have to pivot. Hosting events does not seem like a viable option for the foreseeable future. So coming up with new ideas on how to pivot Gotham Hoops from live events and still including and maintaining the recruitment aspect is something that I've been developing and thinking about for quite some time now. And I'm excited to see where 21 takes us, because I'm eager to continue to increase the visibility of under the radar athletes to national, if not international, teams. So it's directed us greatly.
Then, I mean, you even took my next question. Yeah, I mean, you even answered my next question, which would be, what are some of the positives that you can take away from this whole process? So thank you for that.
No, of course.
And, how have your previous work experiences, such as the video editing roles, agency roles, digital media specialist, software specialist, how has that molded you into the person that you are today?
I'd say that it's helped me become more well-rounded, where I was maybe just a basketball guy. I was just about scouting reports, X's and O's. It's helped me become more of a people person, because it's one thing to just have a scouting service and that's it. You go in the gym, you sit there, you write down your notes and you leave. But what I want to do is I want to build relationships. I want to get to know the athlete and learn more about them than beyond their skill set, because it doesn't take a brain surgeon to know that this player is good at that, or that player could work on that. Like that's just part one of evaluating talent, because, and this is kind of coming full circle to what I was trying to give kudos to Nerlens Noel with. At a certain point, everyone is talented when they're coming out of or going into the draft. Everyone's athletic for the most part. They can all shoot, they can all pass, dribble, etc. But it's what's between the ears that will help differentiate and separate one player from another. So if I was able to learn that about a student athlete and add that into my scouting report, then I thought this also comes back to a competitive advantage and something that would differentiate me from any other recruiting service or scouting outlet. So I just working with college coaches, working in different companies of all sizes, it definitely helped me become more of a people person. And I may have brought this up too early, but one of the first things that came out of my mouth was being comfortable at being uncomfortable. And that's something any young entrepreneur, really anyone in general, to be honest with you, I feel like is crucial, because there's times where I'm walking into a gym of hundreds of people, whether it's in New York, even though that's unlikely, but anywhere else outside the city where I may not know anyone. And I have to build up the courage, even as a young teenager and in my early 20s, build up the courage to go up and make a cold introduction and shake that person's hand that I may just be learning or introducing myself to, and being willing to follow up with them and exchange information. So all of my experience over these past few years have definitely helped me become more confident, more of a people person, so I could enhance Gotham Hoops at the end of the day.
That's great. And if I can add to that, it sounds like you've also learned how to become more vulnerable.
Absolutely. Undoubtedly.
Yeah, and how to put yourself out there to others. So, thank you for explaining that, Ray.
Of course.
And, based off of that, here's a follow-up question. What are some skills that you've learned and developed and been able to curate from these experiences?
Um, Communication skills and listening as well. Just having conversations, because it's one thing, again, I mean, if I'm scouting a player, I can run up to them, say, hey, I'm Ray from Gotham Hoops. I think you did this very well and good luck, and I'm on my way. But I need to be able to have a dialogue, have a conversation with that person, or even the coach or whoever it may be, because I want to get to know who they are. Because as I mentioned, at the end of the day, there's something you're going to need to separate yourself from the rest of the competition, and if you can and if you can do that with your head, then that's what you'll have to do. Or you have to be addicted to the game, or a student of the game, I should say, and wanting to watch film. And you don't know that about a player until you get to interact with them. Granted, that was back in 2009, 10, 11. Now you can just go on a player's Instagram and Twitter and probably learn maybe too much about them. But but even so, I mean, something that they tweet may be something completely different than what you would learn speaking to them. So um, that's it.
Oh, that's awesome. And are there any preconceived misconceptions about the work that you do? What are some of the more exciting parts as well for what you do?
Um, Travel, ability to travel, and then meet new people. I'm always expanding my network. I always want to meet new people again, whether it's players, coaches, scouts, etc. Um, and then I would say misconception is almost what I was just alluding to and describing, is just going in and writing down notes, posting it, and and let that be it. No, you have to get to know the player, and then also is you have to be a student of the game. I definitely took flack as being a 15, 16-year-old going out and evaluating players that were my age, and who is he? Who does he think he is? This, that, and third, um and I didn't walk away from it because of that. It just helped me, and again, I know I've said this a few times now, but I really do feel that I'm a student of the game because I put the work in to understand how the game is played or should be played at all different levels, from, like you mentioned, high school, AAU, collegiately, professionally. Because the way that they play in the NBA is different than they play in EuroLeague, then it's different than they play in the first division in Israel, etc. So I just really want to familiarize myself on the ins and outs of the game, because if I'm evaluating, we may have 1 6 7 player and another guy at the same size, but based on their skill sets, one may be more suitable for not only one team or one league, but also for a different one coach, because of what's in between their ears. So again, it's just really learning so much, even beyond what they can do with the ball in their hands, how they act when the player's on the bench, and how they treat their coach and their teammates, etc. So it's there's really so much more to it than is he or she a good jump shooter? Can they attack to the hoop with their right and their left hand, etc. So there's really a lot more that goes into it than just like X's and O's, you could say.
Oh, for sure. And I know you mentioned travel. Are there any other areas of, what you do with Gotham Hoops that one could consider, not as exciting or more behind the scenes?
I'd say hosting events. I mean, that's been a passion of mine. I mean, there's so much work that goes into it, and I think that may even be a more appropriate answer. Is just there's just people will come to an event. So like the invitational for the college seniors was typically one day, about 4 games. Everyone plays once. Or yeah, I've changed it up over the years, but that's usually the model. So that could take like 8 hours, give or take. There's days, weeks, months of preparation that goes into that 8 hours, and the same could be said for the Winter Classic high school event, where even though that's 2 days, probably even more work. It's coordinating the referees, and on the invitational side, the uniform sizes. So dealing with designer and manufacturer, equipment, like something as silly as basketballs. Like if I'm not able to use the equipment at the gym, I've gone on to strike relationships with Molten Basketball, and they've donated products for events, and instead of going, I've gone to like big box stores to get waters and everything, building relationships with Body Armor, Sports Drink, and other local drink distributors to donate product and be a sponsor. So there's so much that goes on in preparation behind the scenes to execute a near flawless event that could take up to 8 hours.
Awesome. And to finish off our questions until our Q&A starts, so if anybody watching wants to send in a question for Ray for our Q&A, please feel free to do so. In this ever more competitive environment that is entering the sports industry, what is your advice to a listener that is struggling to narrow down interests or find internships, entry-level full-time jobs, or anything else?
You have to be relentless. You have to be willing to work for free. And just they need to think about how many people are in their shoes and how many people want potentially that same gig. And you have to be able to differentiate yourself from everyone else. It's really no different than what we've been discussing about separating yourself as an athlete. Again, at the highest level, everyone just as athletic, etc. But how are you going to differentiate yourself? And same with Gotham Hoops. So you have to be relentless. You have to be incredibly hard worker, and you have to be willing to go the extra mile to get there, because it's an incredibly tough industry to break into. I was fortunate just through support and just having that entrepreneurship spirit inside within me to just create my own entity. And truthfully, that may be my best advice, is just to go out there and start. Nowadays, it doesn't cost a dime to go out there and start an Instagram account or a Twitter account. It could cost a couple of bucks just to buy a website domain name. And if you have an idea that you think is viable, and you've done hopefully some market research and you think that there's an audience for it, just go out there. Because granted, there's been a ton of stuff I've worked on outside of Gotham Hoops and will continue to do so that we're not talking about for a reason, whether it hasn't panned out or it's something that's been in development for quite some time. So again, you have to be able to differentiate yourself, work for free, and if nothing else, just go out there and try your own thing and use that as your experience and put that on your resume to hopefully, again, separate yourself from the competition.
Thank you for that, Ray. I know a lot of our listeners are either in college right now looking for internships, about to head out of school, and are trying to figure out, what's the best environment they can foster their growth as they begin their career. Or even a young professional that has recently started over the last couple of years, but may not like what they're doing and want to, take a leap of faith into the new opportunity. And so, these words are really valuable for them, or invaluable, I should say, and can really help change someone's perspective.
No, I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So hopping into our Q&A, again, if anybody has any questions live, please feel free to shoot that in the chat. But I have one already from Alex Guo. Have you ever thought about expanding your organization across the country? If so, where are some of the locations that you think may best suit your recruiting interests, and why?
No, that's great. Yes, I've definitely given it some thought. Granted, Gotham, as from like a little comic fanboy, is definitely home to New York City. But it's nothing that of course I've executed on yet. I think the next step in that phase, and once the world potentially opens back up, is to host Gotham Hoops events outside of New York, whether it being out on the West Coast, like LA, Midwest, Chicago, Texas, and then down Texas, Florida. So just because, granted, I've been fortunate to attract talent, whether it's high school teams or high school programs and college seniors from all around the country, but it would definitely open up our events to more participants if we were to relocate or host a similar event elsewhere in the country. So those are just a few options.
Yeah, for sure. And another one from Connor Silva. In your opinion, what has been the biggest downside of the transition to athletes specializing in a specific sport, aka basketball?
So another great one. It's just an over again. no scientist, no doctor, but it's just an overemphasis on the same muscles and the same skill sets. And granted, I'll throw out three names, and these are arguably like three of the greatest ball players to ever play. But what they have in common, aside from God-given talent, is that they were multi-sport athletes. Kobe Bryant played soccer growing up when he was living out in Italy. Michael Jordan, of course, was a baseball player as well growing up, and even had a stint in the minors during his Bulls career, which is a conversation for another day. And then LeBron was a star football player in high school. So I know that, and I'm sure that all of those different aspects of skill development, those other sports carried over to basketball. So I think not only can you learn both just physically, just your body, your muscles, your joints, but as well as coordination, but you also get to interact with new people. I mean, the basketball crowd, I think it's a very tight-knit community to a degree, and it that certainly varies from sport to sport. So you get to be a little bit more cultured, and you get to expand your horizons just beyond playing 80 AAU games against the same people in a summer. So I think there's so many pros to playing multiple sports, especially growing up. Even if you have that one in your head that I want to pursue basketball when it's all said and done, that's great. But there's no doubt that sports, or at least one other, can aid in that development in one like basketball.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I know Steve Nash could have went pro in
Yep,
soccer as well.
absolutely.
Wilt Chamberlain was an all-time great volleyball player, and then sneaky, but Chase Budinger was also an incredible volleyball player.
Absolutely. Yeah, Wilt Chamberlain's just a freak athlete. I think he even did like track and high jump and everything. So he's personally one of my favorite, like, top 5 players of all time. I don't think he gets the recognition that because of the era, but different story.
Yeah, my dad always tells me that they actually made a rule because he used to shoot free throws and would actually dunk it from the free throw line, maybe one step.
No, he was a different breed. Different breed. I would have loved to see him in today's. I know Shaq talks all the smack. Granted, no one in today's game could stop a prime Shaq, but Will, just with his frame, his athleticism, he would more than dominate today. But again, different story.
Yeah, oh, for sure. So a question from Isaiah Friedman. As someone who's been in the industry for a while, what's the biggest change in the high school sports media landscape that you've witnessed?
I think it goes back to something that I mentioned earlier, is there's just so many more eyes, so many more cameras on these players. So to me, it's a gift and a curse, because it does promote players, but I think what we found is that there's just a lot of that attention is being given to the same group of players. And again, I'm all for promoting guys, but there definitely needs to be a foundation that is promoting and spotlighting those hidden gems. So that's something that I've seen that has changed, because I went from just being really one of a few, if not the only person in a high school gym or at a park filming events back in 2009, 2010, and now there's 5 people under each basket, if not more, grabbing highlights of guys. So it's just really, there's just so many more eyes. So that's probably the biggest difference in the landscape from back then to now.
Question from Dan Cott. What is the recruiting process like to bring teams in? Is the name Gotham Hoops growing in that world where the name sells itself?
I'd like to think so. Something else that to me personally is a competitive advantage or differentiator is our reputation. And granted, Gotham Hoops, for the most part, is a one-man show. I am fortunate to bring in volunteers and work with great individuals when I host these events. But having Gotham Hoops be a reputable name in high school grassroots basketball, as well as serving college seniors, I think that goes a long way. And it's a lot of it too is like word of mouth. So if I host one, granted, I mean, we've had the first year of doing the high school event, we had two teams come down from Toronto, Canada. One of the coach of one team I knew, and based on our brief relationship, he recommended me, or someone else recommended my event, and they both came down. And then that following year, two other Toronto area teams must have heard of their experience and spoke to their coach and expressed interest in coming down. So a lot of it has to do with not just reputation for myself or Gotham Hoops, but also just their experience in the event. That's really what it boils down to, and that's why I emphasized people come to an event and they're in and they're out, but there's just countless hours of preparation that goes into creating hopefully a satisfying experience for them, whether they're a spectator, even but referees, and of course the participants, the players, and the coaches. I want everyone to have a great time and see it, and hopefully it's a valuable time for them.
Yeah, and here's another great question to follow that up. What are your thoughts on mixtape culture making players seem better than they are simply because they have good highlights, but they don't necessarily make a huge impact game to game? And that's from Isaiah Friedman as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Excuse me.
Bless you. No worries, bless you. I think, granted, this isn't a direct correlation because coaches definitely see guys live, but that could very well have an impact on why there's so many college transfers every year. Because a college coach or programs may flock to a gym because they've seen highlights on a player jumping out of the gym or doing this, that, and the third, and they recruit them, and the player therefore goes to a school, not necessarily for the wrong reason, but mainly because it's not a fit. But they attracted recruiters based on their, whether mainly it's their athleticism or their ability to. I mean, if you can shoot, you can shoot. But that's really what it comes down to, is that kids nowadays are just so darn athletic, and really everyone can, not everyone, but there's a handful of guys in each pocket of the country that can just jump out of the gym. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they can do X, Y, and Z. I remember, not to get off topic, but I remember LeBron and Draymond Green talking on their show, on his show, The Shop. And they were saying that there's guys in the NBA that don't belong there. Like, just because they're athletic, they're there. And I think I feel like that's a lot of it has to do with promoting these freak. But so I just, again, it also comes down to the fact that they're just highlighting the same kids, and there could be 20 cameras filming two or three guys on playing in one game. So it's I mean, it's something's got to change at some point, and hopefully Gotham Hoops can have a new impact on promoting up and coming players.
Yeah, and I know you touched upon this earlier in terms of the fact that the market is very highly saturated, but Will Mirable wants to know, how do you differentiate yourself and your brand throughout that highly saturated market? What makes you and your company unique, and how have you been able to utilize this in the pursuit of success?
Absolutely. To me, it's all about relationships. Again, those same people that may be filming these players don't have I don't want to say courage, but the wherewithal to go up and introduce themselves to the same player that they're going to film for 2 hours straight and then go home and cut up highlights. Some of them do, for sure, but I would doubt that a lot of them do. So it's those personal relationships that's number one, and then two, it's the contacts with team representatives, and then I'm going to keep going back to it because I think that's really my biggest competitive advantage is my international network. And I've been fortunate through my events, through being a certified agent, I've built relationships with decision makers abroad. So I can help open doors for players that may not have that opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah, and so Jordan Edelstein has a question, and I think what he's trying to ask is, did you always have the intention of jumping into the sport industry? And with that being said, like, obviously you were a big basketball fan growing up, big basketball junkie. Did you know that this was something that you wanted to be a part of, or did it just kind of fall into place? And at what point in your career did you realize that this was the avenue that you wanted to pursue?
Maybe a little bit of both. So I grew up playing just like a lot of us. Of course, aspirations of having my name called at the draft and playing in the NBA. Wasn't soon after that I realized that wasn't going to be my reality. But I knew I wanted to stay in basketball. I knew that there was an opportunity for me just because I even at a young age, just being a student of the game. That was how I was going to differentiate myself from anyone that was looking to be in the game, in the sport, that wasn't going to put the ball in the basket. So it was just and again, going back to the fact that I had entrepreneurship spirit, and I had the support behind me to pursue my passion. So granted, I did freelance work for a few, like LongIslandBasketball.com, NY Hoops. So I did freelance work for a couple local media outlets where I was writing articles. And then again, at 15, 16 years old, I took it upon myself to create my own outlet, and do things my way. And that led me to just meeting so many wonderful people. And we all share the common, what we share in common is our love for the game. And so that just goes back to my little piece of advice: is just if an opportunity isn't there, then make your own, and carve out your own niche. So I knew that, just to answer really Jordan's question, I knew that this is something I wanted to do. It's been a roller coaster journey for better or worse, but I'm incredibly proud of myself, and I know I've learned a lot. So I'm excited at 27, turning 28 in a few months. I'm excited to see what's on the horizon, not only for me personally, but Gotham Hoops and any other venture that I'm a part of, based on my experience for this past 10 plus years.
100%. And with the rise of sponsored high school teams such as Sierra Canyon and the Oak Hills of the world, Christ the Kings, like you mentioned earlier, Lou High, how has that changed the funding or budgeting for these tournaments and showcases?
It hasn't affected. Granted, those aren't necessarily the caliber of teams that are participating in my events, but to really answer your question, it's they all play in the same events, because depending on who's sponsoring them, that company is also sponsoring the showcase that they're playing in during the high school season. So I mean, there was obviously a whole thing. I won't get into it with the sneaker company and allegiance with colleges. So that's, again, another conversation for a different day. But it hasn't changed my target audience too much, just because I've been able to bring in high caliber, maybe not Nike or Adidas sponsored teams, but high caliber programs from across the country, as far west as Arizona, as far south as Georgia, and as far north as I mentioned, Toronto, in addition to college seniors from all across the country. So truthfully, I haven't aligned myself with a sneaker company for more reasons than one. But I've been, I mean, you can almost like consider myself like an independent event organizer in a way. So I've enjoyed just working with so many different people, because granted, maybe if I had an allegiance to one company, I would lose out on hosting different schools because of that. So I haven't let that affect what I do too much.
Yeah, good for you. And if you can go back to 16-year-old Ray starting Gotham Hoops for the first time, buying the domain, and realizing this was something you wanted to do, bringing a camcorder to the first few events, and
Mm-hmm.
filming Lance Stevenson and Mo
Mm-hmm.
Harkless and Tobias Harris, what would you tell yourself then to be able to propel yourself forward even more?
You know what? I may have two answers for that. Probably the biggest regret, and I was almost half kidding with like the signing, having the guy sign the contract, but unfortunately, and this is something that I am kicking myself to this day, is I don't have um, all of the articles, all the reports, anything I published on the site since then, because I've changed. Not to get too like technical, but I've changed like website hosts. GothamHoops.com has remained the same, but I've changed, like, again, the host. So I lose all of that information. So that's something that I wish I kept up with. And it would be neat just to look look through all those notes on those former guys, but also it would just show just how far we've come and how many guys we've evaluated. And it would have been great just to have one complete or one site with just hundreds, if not thousands, of evaluations to for fans, for teams, for players, coaches, scouts, just to look through. So that's probably something I would have told myself, is just to keep a record of everything. Because I do wish that I had more of that information readily available.
And then now I'm going to shift gears for the question a tiny bit. You know,
Mm-hmm.
It might be the same answer, but if you were talking to senior year of college, Ray, what
Mm-hmm.
was some advice that you would give to that person be?
Get in the door somewhere, still pursue Gotham hoops and use one to leverage the other. What I mean by that is, like, whatever, all my experience through Gotham hoops, use that to hopefully get me in the door, whether it was want to work for a team or an agency or whatever was the case. And then again, use my experience at that said company to help propel Gotham hoops. I think I was a little bit too focused on growing Gotham hoops as a college graduate, and granted, I mean, I hosted my first event my junior year. I graduated a little bit early, so I had one more semester, and then by the time I was hosting my second event, I was already a college graduate, and then I just kept pursuing that. So I may have taken a different route while still maintaining Gotham hoops, because I think it would have elevated, it would have enhanced and propelled Gotham hoops further than to potentially where it is now.
100%. And, it's always nice to look back in hindsight, and, that could even help you going forward.
Absolutely.
And so, fun question here. Top 3 players that you've ever gotten the chance to scout.
Ooh,
or
one
at least
name.
Your favorite.
Oh yeah, so I'll take you up on that one. One name that, truth, I don't even know where he is nowadays, but Josiah Turner. He was a West Coast kid. This whole, like, shifty thing that was coming out, like, he was the epitome of shifty, like one of the best ball handling skills that I had seen. And I was fortunate that he had come to New York to play in the IS8 tournament out in Queens, and he was just unbelievable. It was like 6'3", 6'4" guard. No one could stay in front of him. And he was just amazing just to see live, because if it weren't for IS8, I probably would have been able to see him play. I know you mentioned Lance, but I'll go back, I'll just date myself. I'll go back a few years and go with Sebastian Telfair. So my dad and I we would go to Madison Square Garden, and they would host the PSAL, the public school championship. The boys and the girls preceded them. So I had to see Epiphany Prince and Murray Bertram, who's had a great year both in WNBA and abroad, and Sebastian Telfair. And he was as good a high school player as I've ever seen live. I mean, granted, he wasn't the biggest dude, but he was another shifty guy that no one could stay in front of. But he just had that New York City tenacity that I really appreciated. A third one. Got Josiah, got Sebastian. Shoot. Just seeing those local guys, I'll give them a ton of credit. Like seeing Tobias Harris, seeing Mo Harkless, JJ Moore, another Long Islander from Brentwood, who went on to play at Rutgers and Iona, and has been in the G League for a few years. There's just countless names of guys in the city that I was just enamored with, because they were like the best. They were just the hidden gems coming out of New York, and I was, for early in their high school career at least, and I was just grateful just to have not only the ability to watch them as their career blossom, but also build relationships with them. So it was just neat just to see them throughout their career and to see where they are today.
100%. And quick question, because that brought this up in my head. I know Danny Green's a big Long Island alumnus, and as well as his brother Devontae.
Yep.
Did you get the chance to scout either of them?
So Danny, I missed by a few years. He was just a few years before I started Gotham Hoops. But Devontae, coincidentally enough, I was able to not only scout, but I was able to coach. So I coached a few teams in the IA-State tournament, and then I also would participate in other local high school tournaments because coaching is just a huge passion of mine. And it would be neat because I would be able to combine my interest and passion for coaching and then also recruiting because I would just utilize my network and who I knew to help build as talented a roster as I could. So one little quick story in Devontae, we're playing against Rasheem Dunn, who's St. John's, I believe was at Thomas Jefferson High School, and it was a stacked team. Anyway, we're playing. I had Jaleel Tripp, who was at Pacific University. He just signed with the Grizzlies this past offseason. Ryan Preston was Rhode Island, URI, went overseas, and other top talent, and Devontae Green. And we're down. This was a game. This was in the playoffs to advance to maybe the semis or the championship. We're down in the game. We're able to come back. They miss. We get the rebound. We have a timeout. Probably like 10 seconds left. Devontae gets a rebound. We look at each other. I'm like, just go play. And he gets it, brings it up the court. Getting goosebumps just think about it, not to be corny, but he damn near drops this kid, step back three, and it rims out. And I wasn't mad for 1 second because just having the opportunity with a kid of that caliber, just for him to get that experience of grabbing a rebound, not having to call timeout and set up a play, and we all knew that the ball was going to be in his hands no matter what. So I was just happy for him. Granted, unfortunately, the shot didn't go in, but his career has turned out fine since then. But it was just a unique experience just to be able to be in that driver's seat and let the player do what they do best. And so that was just my quick little Devontae Green story. But yes, so I've been able to scout him, to say the least.
That's great. I remember going to a Lehigh basketball camp and watching Devontae. You know, he was finishing up his senior year there, but he came to scout what's going on in terms of the new players coming up. And then on top of that, there was a kids section, and I remember Lehigh's coach, Coach Buck, sent out every single kid. There must have been 50 or 60 of them, and they were all jumping on him, trying to grab the ball from him, and he was doing figure eights, dribbling super low through every single kid. There were probably 60 kids on top of him trying to get it, and he had the ball handling skills as a senior in high school to get through every single one. And I just remember thinking, wow, that is incredible. But that story that you told is also that speaks to him and his talent as well.
Absolutely. Granted, it would probably be a better story if he made the shot, but again, I can sleep okay at night, no matter what.
100%. And then the last question I wanted to dive into is, you obviously also have a background in analytics. Can you please talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a newfound passion of mine. Granted, as you briefly mentioned before, I was getting into it briefly at while I was a student assistant coach, Coach Hotaling, who's still at UNH, is definitely an analytically minded coach, and Coach Perry, who's now at Southern New Hampshire University as well. And it was just interesting just to learn a little bit more about their insight. But through that experience, I was just able to see wow, analytics is not only helpful today, and this is back in 2012, 13, 14, but and practically ever since then, I've just been thinking of ways how analytics can enhance the game, and practically from a scouting and recruiting standpoint. So I think it's huge. Shot Tracker is probably one of the leaders in basketball analytics, at least here in the States. I know they've raised a couple. They've raised a ton of money. I know you've had Wayne Kimmel on here, and I know 76 Capital is an investor in Shot Tracker. So now more than ever, teams are more willing to have a vesting interest in analytics. And of course, I mean, everyone really knows about the whole Moneyball revolution in baseball and Billy Beane and even what Bill James did. So I just want to be able to combine my interest and my passion with in analytics with my really what I consider being a student of the game. So I am working on something that will hopefully bring those two passions together and hopefully whether that's the pivot of Gotham Hoops or it's a separate entity altogether, I do see analytics having a huge role in basketball recruiting moving forward.
Thank you so much. I know our caption on Instagram was, "What do analytics and basketball recruitment have in common?" One name, Ray Anczelowicz, founder of Gotham Hoops. Ray, thank you so much for coming on and being able to educate everybody on, your path to success in the industry, where you see yourself moving forward, where you see the industry moving forward in terms of analytics. Hopefully, we can all go back to a safe or at least new form of normal once the vaccine rolls out and everybody's able to kind of tone down from everything that's been going on this past year, and you'll be able to host more live events in person. I'm really excited to see where you go from here. And on top of that, thank you for being a positive influence in my life since a young age. And I know a lot of other young, or I guess I'm not young anymore, but a lot of other people my age growing up from Long Island can say the same. So thank you so much for your time, for educating us, and for your great answers and stories.
Now that just made my day. So I appreciate you, everything you've done with SSBC, and just thank you so much for having me on. I had a great time.
Yeah, for sure. If you'd like to take the opportunity now to plug anything, now's the time.
Sure. So I appreciate it. So again, just my name is Ray Anczelowicz. I am the founder of Gotham Hoops. You can find us on all social media platforms at Gotham Hoops. That's about it. But again, I really can't thank you enough, and kudos to you and your team for everything you've built. You're definitely, you guys are an inspiration, and I could not any more look forward to seeing that you have going on.
Thank you so much. With that being said, hope you have a great one. Hope you have a great start to your new year. I know, you just got engaged as well, so that's awesome news.
Thank you.
Happy and healthy.
Same to you. Same to you. Thank you so much, Ben.
Yep. Have a great night. Take care.
You too. Same to you.